Welcome to the show. This is the Patrick Coffin Show, brought to you by MyPillow. Go to mypillow.com. My name, Patrick, at the coupon code PLACE gets you the Patrick Coffin Show discount. It's not just pillows. It's Giza-level Egyptian sheets. It's towels. It's doggy beds. It's slippers. And I'm big supporter of Mike Lindell. This all American made. You're welcome in advance. Go to mypillow.com and see what people around the world are enjoying. You will love the products. Today, we're going to talk about the five empires that are on the march to subtract from our freedoms, from our independence, from the American ideals as set forth in the Constitution and the other founding documents, with my good friend and mentor, Dr. Peter Breggin, known as the conscience of psychiatry. Go to Breggin.com and find out about his Substack that he writes with he and his amazing wife, Ginger. We're going to talk about how people in the Maha movement, the independent patriot movement, need to be very careful about all the voices that represent freedom and independence and true health. There's a lot to talk about, and we're going to today on the Patrick Coffin Show right now. Joining me is Dr. Peter Breggin, author of a growing passel of books at age, I don't even know how old you are, Peter, but you're still cranking out high quality books. I loved your tome that you and I spoke about last time, COVID-19 and the global predators. We are the prey. And I can't wait to talk about what's in your creative hopper. So first of all, great to see you, and thanks for joining us.
You're a hero. It's wonderful to see you. The fight you keep putting up for freedom and for God is amazing. And I'm glad to help and participate.
Well, let me thank you. Let me start with the book that you're working on now. You sent me a very quick summary, and I can't wait to crank through the chapters. Not that you need the support or comments, but you laid out the five empires that have been forming, and it's a really fascinating thesis. Almost like this is a companion volume to the Global Predators book. Most people, or a lot of journalists in our space, the independent, Maha, Make America Healthy Again, and so on, pro-freedom movement, we tend to chase stories. We like chapters, we like events, we like gotcha journalism, and then we move on to the next thing. With this Five Empires thesis, you're opening up the aperture. You're going from a scene to a chapter, and from a chapter to the whole story. How did this idea come about to frame it according to these five empires, even before we list the empires?
Well, as I finished COVID-19 and the global predators, I was looking more and more for what are their organizations, or, where are they distributed? And I was looking clearly, there's the Chinese group, and I thought of them as the Easterners, and clearly there was the Western group, and I thought of them as kind of the Americans, a little bit of Europe thrown in. And as I began to look at that, I realized, wait a minute, there's something much bigger going on in here. There's a contest here. China, the more I looked at China's long history of empires. And Xi Jinping, the head of China, the Communist Party, is devoted as much to his empires and to the Qin dynasty, which was the historians considered literally the first totalitarian dynasty, a few hundred years BC. And he was devoted to that, and outraged that the communists gave up in Russia, and Stalin was removed as a hero from the pantheon after the USSR collapsed. And I thought, well, this is very big. Nobody's talking about this, that China has wanted to rule the world. It wasn't true that nobody was. I'm starting to read books about how China wanted to rule back then.
Yeah.
Wanted to rule the world as a Chinese empire. They wanted to go from as far as, you could see and further to the unknown. And that's exactly, I began to realize that what every emperor wants. Every emperor wants to rule the known world. Mm-hmm. And now the known world's the globe. So I'm starting to look at global empires with the aspirations that all emperors have ever had, which is to slaughter and enslave. I mean, basically, an empire is not These aren't great. Peter the Great in Russia, not great. Alexander, not great. Just mass murderers with a drive to control humanity. So more and more as I'm looking at it, we're looking at, the heart of secular evil, setting aside evil in the sense of looking at the Bible, which I will also look at. We're looking at this huge secular evil. And then I started looking at, where do civilizations start? Where do empires start? They start with civilization. They literally, as soon as there's a large enough number of people to dominate, exploit, enslave, rape, steal their crops, take their houses, people do it. So we stop hunting the giant monster animals because they're running low. We're kind of killing them off. And we've gotten into villages, and we've got a lot of people with very violent impulses who are looking around, and they see people to hunt. I mean, it comes down to that, I think. Now, it may not be a direct change. I don't know that a chief hunter is necessarily an apex global predator. But gradually, everywhere in the world, people come under the control of empires. So I'm looking at that. I'd not deeply thought about that before. And I start to think, what are these empires right now? And one of the things that strikes me fairly early on is, wait a minute, America became an empire. Mm-hmm. And that really was enlightening.
Started off as a republic, became an empire, and now it's becoming more of an oligarchic kind of globalist power. I always wonder if there was a Star Trek teleport machine and Washington and John Adams and Jefferson were to stand alive today, what would they think of what happened?
They think I told you so. Listen, I told you, if you don't keep the Judeo-Christian tradition and the Bible in every school and in every child's hand, if you let go of morality, if you start meddling with foreign nations and get into alliances with godless people who want to destroy you, it's going to go bad for you. Mm-hmm. So stick to the Constitution. Remember the Declaration. I mean, they'd be aghast but not surprised.
Right. So far you've outlined two. So there's the China, then maybe can we call it the Anglo-American Empire or establishment representing the West?
Well, I would say that actually the Anglo gets lost after World War II. America comes out of World War II as the dominant empire in the history of the world. We have the biggest Army, Navy, and Air Force. We have bases around the world. Although we're not keeping large tracts of land, we have bases, several hundred bases spread around the world. We have the only nuclear weapon. We are just a setup to become an empire. I won't go into the background behind that, but just say briefly, Wilson was imperial, Roosevelt, FDR was imperial, Truman was imperial. Most of our people, including to some extent Donald Trump, have been imperial. I would say George Washington is the purest America First person, and Donald Trump is the next, but I don't know if he can hang on to it. So we get the American empire, and it really becomes sort of the neocons, the hawks, and also the elite out of the Democratic Party. They're sort of united in making American empire and making wars. Basically, now, I think this begins to really run into trouble with the American people with the Bush doctrine and George W. Bush, following on his father's footsteps, attacks Iraq, who has no capacity to attack us, makes up a story that's untrue about, bioweapons, and slaughters the Iraqis in the name of regime change. This is the empire of America at its worst, I think, at its peak. And the American public looks at that. Our military looks at that. And they don't like it. And I think that's, if you look at the history, is where the American empire starts to become clear to the people. It's not something they want. We're still enough of a republic that we get a populist movement. And Donald Trump comes in. Really, at war with the American, what I would call it is the American deep state empire. Mm-hmm. That's a good way to look at it. The American deep state empire, and it's at war with Trump. All right, so that then in comes a second empire, China say the third, but the second empire, which is this whole thing about the Great Reset, this whole thing about the New World Order, that is separate to the American empire. That begins way before even, I think, the American empire. There are these huge movements that Ginger and I are still studying for the new book, which are saying we have to have a global empire. And in it, we have to have fewer people. And in it, we have to have fewer nations. And in it, we have to have a global governance. And it's interesting. There's this interesting thing that a lot of our American erstwhile empires, whether it's a Bush or Biden, they talk about this new world order because they're sort of vacillating between the American empire and the new world order, which is Europe and all the white people in the world, all the English-speaking people in the world, in this empire with banking, with the military-industrial complex. It gets a little hard to know whether you're being an American emperor or you're kind of working with NATO, you're working with the EU. And we see this confusion now in Trump because Trump is vastly supporting right now NATO and EU. He's given up on personally ending this war in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's true.
If you follow what I'm just going to say now about what's going on in Ukraine, you'll have most of the people listening will have a strikingly better and different look at what's going on. The Ukraine is a war between the New World Order or the Western Empire and the Russian Empire. And the Ukraine is the battleground. Mm-hmm. And the Ukraine has its own little mini emperor. Oh, would he wish he were the biggest emperor in the world? He even took on Donald Trump in front of the cameras, jerk that he is. And then there's Putin, who everybody sees into his soul and gets mesmerized, including, do you remember when Bush came back from a meeting with him and said, I saw into his soul and he's a good man, he's got a good soul.
He called him Pooty Poot.
Yeah. And then Trump does the same thing. And I think it's Trump, I'm going to get to a big point here. I think he's either a bigger part of evil than we want to admit, or I'd like to hope he's mesmerized and doesn't understand the depth of evil in the people he's dealing with. I think he's struggling with that because he comes back and he thinks Putin's a good guy. Now, or at least he gives it lip service, also part of the game. It gets complicated. But basically right now, Trump is following up on Biden and draining the American people of wealth in order to support the Western Empire's assault on Putin. Now, Putin's got the Chinese empire behind them, somewhat. You know, the empires hate each other. They only hate America more. Maybe I can get to explain that later. They all hate each other. Every empire has hated each other. During the American Revolution, there were probably a dozen or more empires circled around Europe. And the reason we won was that the French Empire and the Dutch Empire joined us against the British Empire, not to free us, but to try to destroy the bigger empire, which was Great Britain. Yeah. And they dealt Great Britain a big blow.
And Great Britain and Germany was a family squabble among cousins.
a lot of nearly incestuous relationships, I think. And all of them war hawks. Anything associated with empires thinks nothing of slaughtering other people and its own people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So, could you say this third group, just to get my arms around what you're saying? This sounds like a more shadowy global WHO, Bilderberg, high finance, Peter Thiel, kind of the let's call them the puppet masters that are more difficult to identify.
Yes.
For the same reason that it's hard to identify someone who holds a different ideology. It's not like, oh, the Nazis had this uniform. Those are bad. the Algerians or the Chinese. There's no uniform. It's an ideological war. Could you say that this third empire is more techno electronic based and therefore harder to get your arms around specifics, especially specific players and the tyrants themselves? See what
You're
I'm
talking
asking?
about the New World Order, essentially,
New World Order
which I
organizers,
call
yeah.
the Western Empire, contrasting it to the Eastern Empire of China, contrasting it to the American Empire. And yes, you're describing what we did a real job on in our book, in the Global Predator book, in COVID-19 and Global Predators, We Are the Prey. I did the deepest dive into the criminal conspiracy behind COVID-19. One of my proud moments, and it's now an ambivalent moment, is Bobby Kennedy. When his book was coming out, I sent him mine, and he endorsed it as when his own book coming out as the deepest dive into the criminal conspiracy behind COVID. And that criminal conspiracy is the New World Order, an empire working with the Chinese Communists, an empire to destroy America first. That is what I call the freedom spirit and the love spirit in America, which is separate from the empires. It's the heritage of our founders.
Peter, why is the New World Order distinct in your description here? When George H.W. Bush first coined it publicly on television, I think after the Iraq War, I want to say it was January 1991, he first said the phrase New World Order, then it was taken up as a catchphrase. And I have an American dollar bill here. I don't know if you can see it there. There's the Masonic third eye, and it says Novus Ordo Seclorum, New World Order. It's embedded in our currency. Could you say there's a lot of overlap between this American empire impulse and the New World Order impulse?
I think they become competing empires, basically, and they're growing at the same time. I think the narrowest empire is the American empire. And a lot of those people go on to become embedded in the New World Order as well. They go back and forth because America is so powerful. It's got global predators, apex predators in it. Bill Gates, for example. But Bill Gates ultimately doesn't give a crap about America or American empire. He wants the global empire. So you get people who have their feet in both places, and Bill Gates is in part controlling even our deep state. He's working with the Department of Defense. Bill Gates literally becomes uses our Department of Defense to do the Operation Warp Speed. They do it. Our FDA doesn't do it. They do it.
Yeah.
And so you get overlaps. But the importance of it is, if you want to look at, like, say, what is Trump facing right now? He's facing, that'll be a good way to go through it. I'll go through, what is Trump facing? He's facing the old guard American empire, the neocons, a lot of the elites in the Republican Party and in the Progressive Party, all of whom had hopes of finally taking over America. And we're seeing that whole conspiracy come out now, confirming what I'm talking about in the last few weeks, as they're beginning to look at Comey and all the rest of those awful human beings who were plotting to overthrow America. They wanted to take charge of an American empire. Not because they loved America, because they loved themselves and they wanted to be the victors. Trump is running into them. He didn't hardly appreciate him, as hardly anybody did during his first term. And second term now it comes up and they try to kill him twice. And it's probably, as much as anybody, the deep state and this kind of American empire. But at the same time, if you look at the deep state, it's relating to the Mossad, it's relating to the British Secret Service people. There's all these links that are mixed in, which I'm just disentangling. And I think I'm somewhat unique in making this model so people can understand it. But the New World Order, I'm not sure that it starts with Bush. I think I have much earlier references to it. But the idea of in fact, I know there are earlier references to it. But the New World Order goes back before to Wilson's time and earlier. That concept is around. There are New World Order books in the 30s. So you have the New World Order going on mostly out of Europe and somewhat out of America. And then Wilson, that's what Wilson's working on in his own mind.
I have to mention here, Peter, I have to mention the work of Carroll Quigley. I don't know if that's a familiar name. Quigley was a professor.
I cite Quigley in my new books.
Okay, great. So my friend G. Edward Griffin has a talk called The Quigley Protocol, the Quigley Formula. And Carroll Quigley wrote this 1,400-page tome called Tragedy and Hope, which is
about that.
It's about that thick. You can use it as an anvil if you wanted to. But every couple of chapters, there's this amazing secret revealed. He was the stenographer of the people who ran the New World Order. The Cecil Rhodeses, the Bilderberg groups, they're all the upper level people who make fun of individual countries when they have their political campaigns and their victories. Yay, we're Democrats, we won, or yay, Republicans, we won. But the real levers of power are above individual nations when you're talking from the global perspective of control and tyranny.
Absolutely. And that's where the ambivalence comes in. I think in Obama, for example, the first thing he does is he makes an apology tour for America, saying we're a bunch of bums. He inspires the final, which I haven't mentioned yet, the Fifth Empire, which is the Caliphate. He inspires the Caliphate to rebel. He gets going Islam again, thinking it can really, maybe, heck, if they can work with an American president, they might just rule the world again someday. People don't know that Islam has twice been the most powerful empire in the world and over history, and it's invaded Europe twice and nearly made Europe succumb to its forces.
They're certainly making intimidation efforts surrounding them. They surround cathedrals. They did this in Melbourne, Australia last month. They did it yesterday in Montreal, just to show a force. They know that they can win demographically as long as Americans are contraceptioning and aborting themselves or otherwise not interested in children, therefore not investing in their future. They don't have to fire a shot. They just have to go up and have a lot of kids.
Yes, exactly. And they put Sharia into their communities, which is the law. And in Islam, there's no difference between the government and religion. It's not like the religion takes over the government or the government it's all one. It was all in Muhammad's head as one concept. And so was war. And so it's a warlike composition of religion and government with the ultimate goal of either converting the whole world to Islam or making the rest of the people slaves, basically, or killing them in war. It's all laid out very clearly. It doesn't even take any interpretation. You just have to be honest and look at what they want to do.
I know you remember Andrew Breitbart, who famously said that politics is downstream from culture. I say religion is upstream from culture, because if you believe God is called Allah, who's a slave master who has no children, only slaves, that's going to produce a human culture that's very different than if you believe in the God of the Bible as a loving father with children.
Right. That loving father doesn't come alive really till Christianity. I say correct. That as a Jew. So that's very interesting to get into too. So let me think how we're covering it. Very quickly, just as people now looking at the world, as Trump looking at the world, or as freedom fighters, you and I looking at the world today. And I'll call us America first because there isn't another better name, or the populist movement, or the patriotic movement, the freedom movement. We're facing destruction at the hands of our own people in the American empire who are really still enraged. And that includes our elite working with the deep state. And that's a kind of separate empire. They opened our borders. They took away our energy dominance. They did everything in their power to destroy America. If you haven't understood it before, if you haven't understood immigration before, that's all it is. It's a destruction of America's freedom principle and love principle, which maybe I can get into some more. America stands for freedom and love in the world, and the love includes community and patriotism. The empires hate America for the freedom spirit, but they also hate America for the love spirit, which makes us want to protect each other, take care of one another, take care of our community, and love our nation. All of that's anathema. It's poison to the empires. So the American empire that was being built by Obama and Biden, and right along with the conservatives, the neocons, and all these warlike people. That's one group we're contending with. The second overlapping group, but different, is the New World Order or the Western Empire. And it came out and is totally described in our book before I start talking about empires in such detail in COVID-19. Now, the next empire we're dealing with is right now is a war between the New World Order and Russia, and Ukraine is the battlefield. Russia is a terrifically powerful, one-time great Russian empire, Christian empire. We don't have many Christian empires right now. I don't think we have any Christian empires right now, actually. It's interesting. And been a big change as the world has grown. But and so Trump comes in, he tries to shut down globalism and the Western global empire, and tells NATO and EU where it can go, and he tells Zelensky where to go, and he actually tries to somewhat cozy up to the Russian Empire, and it doesn't work, and he's really frustrated and angry. He underestimated the malevolence of both Putin and the Western Empire. But now what scares me is that he's actually supporting the Western global empire against Russia. I think that's very dangerous.
And how about the fact that he's, to this day, the proud daddy of Operation Warp Speed? He and Secretary Kennedy have done nothing but ignore the body count and the clear empirical evidence that you've been talking about since 2020. I find it hard to swallow that the man whose catchphrase made him famous and made him, a force, "You're fired," couldn't figure out that Tony Fauci, feet away from him. I mean, I'm just a guy with a laptop. How did I figure this out?
He had to know. I actually let him know this in March, April of 2020. Ginger found the research. I mean, this really disappoints me to be thinking deeper and deeper, because the more deeply I think into it, Trump is really messed up on some profound level. But in March of 2020, while everybody is talking about how no laboratory could make a SARS-CoV, and how the SARS-CoV came out of nature, even though none's ever been found in nature, they didn't say that. While all that's going on, Ginger comes to me with a paper that she saw a hint of on Twitter and managed to track down, which is a paper in 2015 and belongs to a whole line of similar papers in which the Chinese communists are working with the American researchers, including North Carolina, the FDA, and Harvard, mainly North Carolina, funded by Fauci, making SARS-CoVs. And SARS-CoV even in the title. So any journalist would know if they looked. And it turns out, of course, a lot of people knew, and a lot of people didn't want to look. So we then knew quite closely a close friend of the family, and knew him business-wise, a close friend of the family through I'll just say generally our book work, our work with books. And so we sent him a note and said in April, we have just published this column and this video on the fact that, in fact, the U.S., funded by Fauci, and the Wuhan Institute, funded by Fauci, have been working making SARS-CoV viruses, and that's where this thing came from that joint practice. And he immediately, within 3 days, canceled Fauci's funding of Wuhan. Now, we were sort of celebratory, but we were sophisticated enough, but not really as much as to see the evil. But the major press totally ignored Trump's interference and stopping of Fauci completely. Mm-hmm. Our press didn't cover it much. I've barely been congratulated by anybody ever, even when it's in the book on this intervention. And besides that, Fauci went ahead doing it anyway. He found his ways around it anyway, and I think kept getting money to the Chinese through Texas, through other places, and so on.
Yeah, North Carolina, Winnipeg.
Yeah, and always North Carolina. Yeah,
yeah. That's so. We could do a whole show on the lithium deposits and the moving of hurricanes. Maybe that's a future episode.
She could join us for that. So, but all right, so kind of so hard to stay on this because it's also very interesting. So, I mean, Trump heard from me through a general. It was one of his chief consultants, all about this. That's where the communication went. And I have to stop thinking he can't know, because he knew then. As soon as he canceled Fauci's funding and announced that he was doing it at a press conference, and it was mid-April 2020, he didn't say this, of course, and I wouldn't expect him to, based on information I sent up lines to him, and me and Ginger sent up lines via a mutual friend.
That's early. That is early.
It's so early. So how could he not know?
Yeah.
And we were quite specific about what we knew. So this Trump is now acting like he's going to support NATO and the EU, meaning the whole Western global empire, which ultimately wants to destroy America against the Russians. It's bizarre. Mm-hmm. Now, so we've covered now a few of the empires. And just to remind you, so we've got the Chinese Communist, and we've got the Russian, we've got the American empire, we've got this European American global big deal empire that we described in the book. Didn't call it an empire, I don't think. And then there's the Islamic Empire, which is very old and very deep, goes back to, I think, 500 or 600 BC. One of the first things Muhammad does when he starts to channel Allah and put down Allah's words, word for word, not as his own, but as Allah's words, is he starts raiding neighboring, he and his family, largely unarmed caravans coming by his hometown, and he starts capturing towns. And when the Jews a Jewish town really doesn't want to go along with it, he murders about 600 Jews. So this is really early, really, really early.
While he's consummating his marriage to Aisha when she's 9.
Oh Lord, I don't even know about that. I can't know everything. I don't want to know everything. I don't want to hear.
Yeah, but there's some things you need that your eyes have to be both open. Yes. My friend Robert Riley has written a wonderful book about this called The Closing of the Muslim Mind. He'd be a good guest for you, by the way, Robert Riley.
Oh gosh, would you connect us?
Yeah, 100%.
And I want to get the book, The Closing of the Muslim Mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But, wow. So that's the kind of stuff. Yeah. That's the basic system and the connections. And I have exactly the concerns you described about the vaccines. It makes no sense. What I wrote in my Peter and Ginger's Breggin's Substack was that I couldn't in conscience, even I kind of know, I kind of know Robert F. Kennedy. I've even talked to him on the phone for a half an hour, along the way here.
I've interviewed him 3 times.
Oh my gosh. So good. But I'm I don't think he would want to be interviewed by me. We've never connected in that way. But
Why,
I
why,
said that I'd be a co-conspirator if I didn't say, Robert, quit or change or get fired, because I can't, if I don't say that aloud, I'm a co-conspirator to the ongoing murder, harming, and even sterilizing of Americans.
how much of the Maha Make America Healthy Again is, in fact, a psyop to hoodwink naive conservative freedom fighters? Because when I read Secretary Kennedy's endorsement of these wearables, my blood ran
There
cold.
you go.
Tell us what is a wearable, and is this a Trojan horse in a legitimate movement? What's behind wearables in the big picture, and what is a wearable? Because you and Ginger have been all over this.
Well, it's Ginger who discovered the wearable quote and who's written about it. So we look for her. Well, it's hard to tell her and my stuff apart often, but it usually says at the end of it who was the main author, whether it was joint or one or the other author. It doesn't say at the top. It always says Peter and Ginger at the top. Wearables are the same thing as injectables. They're these, he's talking about internal identity tags that contain all the information everybody could ever want on you.
Can we use the word chip safely here?
They're chips. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not as quick as I might be.
No, I get it. I had a conversation with the late Zeb Zelenko about this on our Truth Over Fear Summit, and I said, "What do you think where are we going with this?" And this is back before Naomi Wolf, my other guest, started talking about digital passports having nothing to do with health and everything to do with gathering data on you. And he said, "Oh, this is the mark of the beast. This is Revelation 13." That's what Jewish rabbis telling me about the book of Revelation.
And my dear friend, it was one of the great losses of my life when he died, but one of the great things that I knew him for a while.
Yeah, yes, true.
Zeb Zelenko.
So
he'd so love what we're talking about today. Zeb, I hope you're listening in.
Yeah. So how does deploying a nation that's willing to comply with wearables, how does that help the global predators? For biometric information, they can track you GPS. This has gone terribly wrong in places like Afghanistan when the Biden military machine withdrew and left a chaotic mess that led to actual deaths. Just talk about the Afghanistan connection.
Well, this is Ginger's research, and what she did find is that we left behind people who had these chips in, and that made them easily findable when the new government took over. So they, she's looking at they're being murdered and, other tortured, and God knows what else would have happened to them. It's all a part of the control network that will eventually make it very easy for an emperor to rule the world. An emperor and his committee, if he wants one. And now you see emperors can do and are beginning to do, and separate emperors competing with each other, they can actually see the whole world. They know the known world, and increasingly they have data on everybody in the known world. And this makes the struggle between the empires over who's going to rule the world very real. I'm not sure Trump fully gets it, but the other portion is he a part of it? Because it's really hard for me to face it, just like anybody else's, because it's not just the vaccines, it's the wearables. What a euphemism. It's Bobby Kennedy's whole approach to drugs. They are doing nothing to protect America from succumbing to the drugs as it has been. One of the things about getting people on any psychiatric drug is while you're on the drug, at least, your frontal lobes are not working as well.
That include methylene blue that he's been...
Yes, and that very much includes methylene blue, which Bobby was photographed taking, and which Alex Jones says, I'm a friend of Bobby and he loves methylene blue and advertises it. And I've said, stop it, guys, stop it. What are you doing? Because all of that keeps Americans from being proud, alive, engaged, full of energy. I watch it on the micro level of marriages when I take people off of psych drugs.
Mm-hmm.
If one of them is on drugs and the other isn't, the one on drugs has no idea about why the marriage has gone bad and why there's struggles with the children.
Mm-hmm.
And the one who isn't taking the drugs is overwhelmed and doesn't know what to do, but they still love the partner or they wouldn't be in the couples therapy and working.
Yeah.
And what we see is a very ordinary but wonderful thing, which is gradually, it's often the wife who's on the drugs. The husband regains his patience, says he's going to look at changing himself. He can't blame it all on his wife. And besides, it's not his wife, it's damn doctors. And we begin to work together. And the woman, or if it's a single man, often doesn't matter, it can be a gay man, it can be a black man, it can be any kind of man, they come alive. They remember that they didn't have enough feeling at their daughter's wedding. They remember how much they once loved each other. They become more engaged with me. They start telling me they're grateful of working with them. I bring up God and ask them if they believe in God because they've been afraid to tell a doctor anything about God, of course.
So just been narcotized, numbed.
They're numb, that's right. And they come out of it. Well, that also keeps a person from, if you can't engage with God or your husband or wife or your friend or your therapist, you can't engage the enemy. You can't engage with the kind of concepts you and I are working on. You get bored by it. You don't make sense out of it. You got other problems overwhelming you and so on. So keeping Americans on drugs, as Bobby is doing, and worst of all, taking a drug that is actually doesn't require a prescription, methylene blue,
was grandfathered into the FDA. It was invented 140 years ago. Is it the first chemical compound neurotoxin?
It's the first chemical compound neurotoxin made in a lab that was used for medicine. Definitely the first, and it may be the first ever concocted. It's the mother of all psychiatric drugs. Wow. And here's the irony. The reason, even though it worked as it's an antidote to certain poisons, what it does is it jacks up the mitochondria ability to suck in more oxygen. So if you have a poison that's interfering with oxygen, it helps. Now that doesn't mean like all the advocates for it that's wonderful. It jacks up oxygen. No, jacking up mitochondria is only good when you're being poisoned.
Peter, isn't that a little bit like saying the food in the Hindenburg was delicious, right?
The metaphor is a bit much for me at the moment, but it sounds great.
Yeah, and never the subject of any FDA safety clinical trials.
No, it's never been even formally approved by the FDA. It just was grandfathered in. And the FDA from the beginning has warned about combining it with foods and other drugs can make it lethal. I have stuff on my website that saying that, and I knew that right away because you see the big thing about it is it's actually very similar to a combination of the first antidepressants, which were very toxic, and methamphetamine. It has those combined characteristics. Yeah, so, of course, you're going to get all excited when you take it. You're going to have rushes and all that. So much so that the FDA never even allowed it to be tested psychiatrically. Because why wouldn't they have tested it?
Yeah, you and I have talked about this in previous interviews, Peter, about the lack of science between on the one hand, either lack of serotonin in the brain or brain biochemical imbalance and depression. This isn't at the basis of your book, Talking Back to Prozac. And what Eli Lilly did out of thin air in their sales and marketing department in the 1970s. Is that a fair summary of what happened?
It's just a marketing ploy. The only biochemical imbalances in the vast majority of people who go to psychiatrists, or now you can get them from your nurse practitioner or your, obviously anybody who with any kind of a degree. It's empowered by the state to do it, any doctor. You don't have a biochemical imbalance until you get the drug. And you get a biochemical imbalance the first time you digest a pill, and it goes through your gut and into your bloodstream, because it's built to immediately cross your blood-brain barrier and hit your brain immediately. Yeah. Doesn't take weeks, just a day, and it goes.
I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Joseph Witt-During. I'm sure you know Joseph, the Taper Clinic. And it seems like your message that you've been talking about for 40 or 50 years is starting to catch on among other psychiatrists who are interested in
one Joe.
One?
One Joe. Yeah.
Well, there's I just watched an interview with, if she's there, hey, I'd love to have you on my show as well. Her name is Laura Delano. She wrote a book called Unshrunk.
Yeah, she's not a psychiatrist, but we're trying to get a hold of Laura too. I knew her dozens of years ago.
She's done some good interviews on her own journey. Yeah,
she's good.
Lone voices in the wilderness.
Well, you can't really function as a real psychiatrist without being an abuser of humanity. You have to give up your authority over people. I'd work very hard to not come across to my clients as some authority when I speak. I say, we'll have conversations, disagree, work with me. Let's get to really understand you and your values, and I'll share my values, really open about who I am. We'll work together. If you believe in God, that's going to be a tremendous help. But I'm not God. Where psychiatrists play God with every patient. Ordinary psychiatrists. They don't tell them the truth about the drugs. They make believe, a great fallacy, that our problems don't derive from our own selves and our relationship to the world and God. No, they say it's a materialistic thing. It's just your brain. It's very similar to Marxism in that regard. I don't care how right-wing you are as a psychiatrist. If you're a psychiatrist, you're a Marxist, basically, because you're acting like a collectivist will dole you for the benefit of your family and society or the hospital. Very collectivist ideas, and we rarely do they bring up God. Although I have spoken before evangelists on a number of occasions, and I have wonderful stories about that. And they're very in sync with, of course, a lot of what I believe about the drugs, and that's why they would have me speak.
Let me ask you about something that I want to go gingerly, but I think it's important, and it's been a sub-theme of a lot of the things I've been saying and what you've been saying, and that is the fear that people have of identifying the names of the predators. You have Robert Malone and Matthias Desmet talking about mass psychosis, which to me verges on blaming the victims.
Oh, it is blaming the victims.
Without naming the.
I've got a big section on my website about that, because Malone sued me for just saying, basically being critical of him. The judge threw it out of court and warned him that actually he had been on the verge of being frivolous.
Well, one thing I think I've seen you note this, and that is for a population of it's 0.2% of the world, 13 to 15% of the population happens to be Jewish, as you are, Peter. So often the surnames of the people running these operations, whether it's the SARS thing or something else, happen to have Jewish surnames.
I didn't understand what the first thing you said, whether it's...
so often the revolutionaries who'd you
mention? I didn't get...
Well, let's say Michelle Walensky, Sherry Berger, Mitchell Wolf, Jeff Resnick, Xavier Becerra, Albert Bourla, Tal Zaks, Larry Fine. But sometimes you notice the high proportion of Jewish surnames who are running the show. That's basically running the tyranny operation. On the other hand,
I think that's somewhat selective already, because I don't know who any of those people are.
Yeah, these are the all civil czars, the chief of staff, medical directors, the HHS secretary, the head of Pfizer, Moderna chief scientist, BlackRock, and CEO.
Well, Jews do get into high positions, but I mean, it's interesting. I'm kind of going at you with a little tweak right away because I don't pay any attention to those names. I don't think any
Yeah.
of them are as important as, you know,
Yeah, I guess
billionaires.
I'm thinking of the phrase from the book of Revelation since Zev mentioned it to me, and that is what the New Testament calls the synagogue of Satan, as distinguished from God-loving Jews who believe in the Torah and are open to conversations about Jesus. Not everybody who claims the name. In fact, I think there's an ongoing debate among Jews about what constitutes a Jew. You know,
Well, that's always probably been, but not really. A lot of that's exaggerated. I mean, all right, why don't you keep talking? Because I'm jumping on you. Why don't you keep talking about what you want to get at here, my friend?
No, the difference between Jews who are freedom-loving, who are open to the truths of the Bible, who are pro-life, they're pro-family, versus the ones that seem to be characterized by their opposition to Jesus and to Christianity and to the transcendent order. Just the pure, almost the stereotype of a secular Jew who's functionally, if not really, an atheist.
Well, I'm still not sure what you're asking. The Jews have a history in the Bible, goes back to Exodus, which interestingly, I've been looking at these interesting things I'd never thought about before. But Exodus is the first ever written expression of we have a right to be free from empires. I've not been able, even with AI, to find anything else that comes before it. So the Jews have been persecuted in a fashion that is not comprehensible to a single human mind. I've tried to look at it and read books about it, but everywhere the Jews go, they're persecuted, and they go everywhere because multiple times they've been driven out of their homeland in Judea or Israel. So the whole history of Judaism is being slaughtered and rejected by the rest of the world. See, I'm going to turn this on its head. And that starts with Christianity and then the empire, when Christianity becomes part of the Roman Empire and it becomes empirical in that sense, you know?
Yeah.
So the Jews survive. How? The Jews are the only surviving people in the whole world who have a book of their own that identifies them going back thousands of years.
Yeah, way predates everything.
It way predates everything, yeah. That you can't go back to Egypt and find somebody who can say, well, here are my ancestors. I'm a Pharaoh's Egyptian. I was there too.
Right.
This is fascinating. The Jews are the only people like that. The Christians in particular resent the Jews being called the chosen people, but most of them don't know that they were chosen to get under God's whiplash or else. And God didn't even think they were nice. He loved them, but he didn't think they were nice. So, first of all, you have a people who have maintained an identity everywhere they've gone. That makes them the enemy of all oppression. So the Jews are the essence of anti-empire. And this new work I'm doing on empires is so enlightening. And I can criticize Jews up and down, but we'll wait for that for another day. So what I'm saying is your puzzlement doesn't begin with the history of the Jews. So any society they're in, there are some Jews, and I'm very glad for them because they've kept my identity alive. Because I was raised secular. I never even got bar mitzvah.
You didn't get bar mitzvah?
No, it cost money, and who wanted to bother with me? I was my own person, whatever. My big brother, he got bar mitzvah. So I wasn't even bar mitzvah. So I had to start figuring all this out about it for myself. The Holocaust and all that stuff. Nobody talked about any of that. And I grew up among a very loving bunch of young Jews in school. I was their president often of the class, but it was a mixed school, about half and half Jews and Christians. And these were very bright people, and they weren't particularly anti-Christian, but they were probably scared to whatever degree they knew about the Holocaust, because it was going on when I was 9. It was discovered. It was liberated when I was 9, 10 years old. But what am I getting at? So the first thing you need to know about the Jews is they have managed to keep their identity forever. No one else has. No one's even come close. And that they've given so much to Christianity that they can't be forgiven. They gave God to Christianity. They gave Exodus to Christianity.
Yeah, the moral law, the structure of prayers, the Psalms, all the Catholic
all of it,
sacraments,
including most important, the Ten Commandments. And then they gave a warning to everybody too, which is don't have a king.
Yeah.
And
David worked out well for a while.
Well, God was very specific in Samuel 8. I love it. I'm quoting the Bible. And God was very specific in Samuel 8. He says, I'm not going to stop them. Tell the Jews, Samuel, I'm not going to stop them. But this is what a king's going to do to him. He's going to take his sons away and make them die in battle. He's going to tax you. He's going to steal part of your crops. Probably going to take your women too. It goes on and on. It's an amazing litany. So he establishes a whole process starting with Exodus. This is the first time I've explained this on the air. A whole process starting with Exodus that goes then to through all these gifts that the Jews are going to give, and then to don't have kings. So he lays it out there. Stay with this kind of religious community rule that we've evolved for ourselves. But then there's two other things that come along. The next thing that comes along is shared in the Old Testament, much more than I originally thought till I researched it, with the New Testament. And that is, fear not, God loves you.
Yeah.
That's new again. None of these principles are found anywhere other than in the New or the Old Testament. It's quite amazing. And then finally comes Jesus. And Jesus is a Jew again, another gift. Of course, you can't forgive us. Another gift I'm teasing you, to the Christians.
Of course,
and Jesus says, I have actually a new commandment. People don't realize the importance of that particularly. He's saying, I have a new commandment. Now, somewhere he seems to say it replaces, but he's pretty clear to me. He's saying it's just the acme of it.
It's more like a fulfillment or the perfection of it.
Yeah, and what it is basically, and he says it in different ways, sometimes calling it a commandment, not probably 30 different ways or something. He says, love God, God loves you, love one another. That's the whole package. I love you.
Love your neighbor as yourself, which means self.
Yeah, that gets thrown into as a separate thing. Yeah.
I could do a whole show just on your own changing religious perspective and inviting God into therapy, because
that's during your lifetime. I think that I've with me I've done that.
I mean, you're a Harvard-trained psychiatrist. Most psychiatrists are functional atheists. They never bring up God with a patient.
No, they would supplant them in the room.
Yeah, right.
You bring up God, it supplants you in the room.
Yeah, job security. Stay atheist. Was there an inciting incident where you decided that the role of faith is going to be key to regaining mental health and recovering the loss of hope as a source of depression and anxiety?
Well, it started with Ginger.
Mm-hmm.
So,
your Christian wife?
Yep. I got together with Ginger well, actually, it started with Mary when I was 16 years old. So remember, nobody in my family ever talked about loving me or loving each other or loving anybody or loving God. My mother's concept of God was he would get even with the Goyim someday for the Holocaust. Not an unreasonable thought from a body of people who managed just to stay alive through thousands of years. And I went to a Methodist church on Sunday with Mary, much to my parents' consternation. I think I told them. I can't even remember now, actually. And I'm sitting there minding my own business, and it's really surprising to me. I've probably never been in a group of completely Christian people before, as I think about it now. And they're all very sweet and pleasant and kind of nice people. I kind of like them a lot. And the minister starts talking about love and loving each other and loving one another. And I don't think I was ever the same. Isn't that interesting? But I never went to another church except with other Jews. We'd go to church, go to the Catholic Church at Christmas and stuff for the beauty of it and the spirituality and stuff.
One of my favorite Catholic Bible scholars is a young scholar named Brant Pitre, Pitre. He has 2 books on the Jewish roots of the faith. One is called The Jewish Roots of the Eucharist. The other one is The Jewish Roots of Mary. You mentioned Mary. I thought, did Peter just mention the Blessed Virgin Mary? But you meant another Mary.
No, but I'm quite aware of the Blessed Mary and all of that stuff. I've read a lot Jewish about mother. The history of Christianity. Yeah.
Do you have a book
Jewish
title?
Mother.
Yeah. Do you have a book title for the 5 Empires thesis, Peter?
I'm not ready yet, but we'll be talking just more and more about it. It's been a huge confrontation with myself writing this particular thing. First, because I think of the confrontation with evil goes much deeper than the first book, which still had it in it. The new concept, which I haven't seen anywhere, which is required reading dozens of books or at least skimming a lot of them. We've got huge libraries now about empires. And also in March, I got COVID of 23. And I had a committee of wonderful freedom docs supervising me, and they finally said, "We hate this. You got to go into a hospital. You may die." I had to go to the hospital. I had a wonderful nurse that came from a doctor's office and a wife of a doctor. And she came and Ginger couldn't be with me. She was, and I got through it. But I had a lot of setback in my mental activity from it. And it's quite similar, folks, to I never had any of the shots, but it's all a spike. It's all the same damn spike, folks.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of people are getting one degree or another of what I got. And I got it because I was 85 years old at the time. I'm 88. No, I'm 89 now. 89 now. So I was probably 86, 7, 8, 9, 86. So I was right in the bullseye of dying from COVID.
Yeah.
And I had such a bad x-ray that my friends, the freedom docs, sent it on to Europe to a guy in Great Britain. He said it looked like the ground glass of COVID. SARS-CoV-2.
Wow. Well,
I was very, very sick, and I had to recover. But that was also very spiritual because I tried to promise myself if I ever became demented, I'd be a sweet old man for my wife. I would just never go the way a lot of those people go. And I became a sweet old near-death man. I even got calls from a couple of my patients in the hospital, and they said I was like talking to Yoda. I just was happy and talking about God and you're stuff.
Still seeing patients, still working.
It's my favorite. Next to being with Ginger, it's my favorite thing.
Beautiful.
And being with you too. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. I do love you. I've been an admirer of yours for a long time.
Yeah.
What would you say to President Trump and Secretary Robert F. Kennedy if you had a shot at a direct message? What would you say?
Oh, I would say, first of all, Ginger and I love Trump. We've been big supporters. Another reason I didn't get to do this book was we gave it all up for a time to mostly write about freedom and the freedom movement and Trump. Say, I really understand Bobby and his progressive roots, and we have a fondness for him, but we feel that both you and Bobby in particular, I haven't looked at the guy who runs the FDA, he must be a piece of work too, but particularly looking at Trump and at Bobby, you guys are heading us toward perdition. All the good work you're doing will be destroyed by your supporting the pharmaceutical industry to continue making vaccines, especially COVID-19, but also the others, but especially COVID-19. And, by continuing to support the pharmaceutical industry and its drugging of America. We're the biggest probably recipient of drugs ever, because you're destroying the capacity for Americans to even know and enjoy their freedom. Yep. Because you're compromising the frontal lobes. First thing that goes with the frontal lobes is spirituality, fine emotions, appreciations of wonderful things. You become more ordinary. You get put down the ladder of complexity with your first dose of any drug. I don't care if you're smoking, drinking, taking marijuana, doing methylene blue, but any drug. By the way, don't come off drugs precipitously.
Yeah, that's key.
At least most drugs.
Got to be taper. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've got the only, this will tell you how bad psychiatry is. I've written the only book from a psychiatrist and a medical publisher, so it's really coming out of an established structure. Is called Psychiatric Drug Withdrawal, a handbook.
Psychiatric drug withdrawal. I know there's a lot of people who are interested in this topic that are watching and listening to you now that are going to grab this.
It's a very good book, and it updates my whole critique. First half of the book is my critique of the drugs, what you need to look out for, and the second half is how to come off each group of drugs.
Okay.
There's a lot of work in it. Explains to you how you won't even know what's happening to you. You must have a companion who's going to know if you're getting too high coming off, if you're getting too low coming up, because the drugs cloud our judgment. I call it medication spellbinding. It goes into all these amazing things that I've been working on.
Breggin.com is the website. Do what I do. Subscribe to Peter and Ginger's Substack. You're
free.
Not going to get
it's free.
It's totally free.
You can contribute, and people do, but you get everything for free. But gosh, we still have so many people among our 70,000 who pay. I mean, that's nice for us too. And
helps the message get out to more and more people. I always learn so much speaking with you, Peter. Thanks for being on the show again. And when the book comes out, I'd love to take a round two, because I feel like we've just begun to scratch the white of the eggshell here.
I'm going to send you're going to be the first person other than Ginger to see some of the opening chapters. And it's a lot about Christianity and Judaism and the empires. It's an amazing tapestry, and I'll get feedback from you, because you'll be able to say, I don't know about this or that, and you'll get me thinking.
I would be honored. I'd be honored. That'd be awesome. One more thing to look forward to.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much, Peter. God bless you and Ginger. Say hi to
Ginger
Mom
sends her love.
All your people. Awesome. This is the Patrick Coffin Show. In the meantime, be a saint. What else is there?